Hello everybody, we're going to be looking at our maths again today. So we're looking at fractions, haven't we? We just started learning fractions last week and we're going to carry on our learning today. So don't worry if you found it a bit tricky, because it's always a bit tricky when we learn something new, isn't it? But as we start practicing and learning more about it, then things become a lot easier. So last week you were looking at refreshing your memory of fractions and what they are, and today we're going to have a look at if we are able to find, write and name different fractions. And we're going to be looking at two fractions that you should have come across in year one, so that hopefully should make it a bit easier for you to understand today. We're just going to recap our memory. So we're going to look at a fraction called a quarter, and we're going to look at a fraction called a half. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to have a think back to what is a fraction. So I know that you had to think about that last week. So can you just think in your head, what is a fraction? And can you tell somebody next to you, or if you don't have anyone there, you can just say it out loud at the screen to me. So what is a fraction? Hopefully you said that a fraction is when you've got a whole and it is split into equal parts, and then the amount of parts that you have of that whole is your fraction, isn't it? So you can have different fractions of the whole depending on how many parts of it you have. So that's what a fraction is, and hopefully you said that to your adult or sister or brother, whoever is with you at home. Okay, so now we're going to have a reminder and a think back to our denominator and our numerator, because we learnt those two fancy words last week. So if I show you this fraction, can you tell somebody who's with you, or again if you don't have anyone, tell the screen, which one of those numbers is the denominator and which one is the numerator? Hopefully you said that the top one is the numerator and the bottom one is the denominator. So now can you tell the person that's with you, or again tell the screen, what is the denominator and what is the numerator? What do those words mean? So if we know which one it is, but what does it mean? So hopefully you said that the denominator tells you how many parts your whole has been split into, and your numerator tells you how many of those parts you have. So you might have a pizza that's split into 3 equal parts, but you only have one of those parts, and that's what the numerator tells you. Fantastic, well done. Right, so let's have a look at our fractions for today then. So I've got 2 drawings here, and you can see our 2 fractions we're learning today. So we've got our half here, and we've got our quarter. So we can see that a half is when we've got a whole that is split into 2 equal parts, but because we only have a half of it, we only have one of those parts. So you can see one of my parts is shaded there. In our second fraction here, a quarter is when you've got a whole that is split into 4 equal parts, but you only have one of those parts. I wonder if you could quickly have a go at just writing for me in your home learning journal. Can you write just the fraction a half, so a 1, then you've got a dash underneath it, and then a 2 underneath for a half. And then could you quickly have a go at writing a quarter? So could you write a 1 and then a dash and then a 4 underneath? Have a quick go at writing that in your book. So pause me now and quickly have a go at writing a half and writing a quarter, just to practice writing what those fractions look like. Right, well done. Well, now you've done that, I'm going to show you some cards, and I want you to call out to me whether you think these shapes have got a half coloured in, or whether they've got a quarter coloured in. Okay, so I want you to speak to the screen. So I want you to say to the screen or shout at the screen, not too loudly, what you think. If you think they're a half or a quarter. Imagine we're sitting on the carpet at school and I'm sitting on my chair and I'm about to show you these cards. Okay, so we've got this one. Hopefully you said that is a half because it's split into 2 equal parts, but we've only got one of the parts shaded in. Okay, next one, ready? Oh, what do you think that one is? Hopefully you said a quarter because your shape is split into 4 equal parts, but you've only got one of them. Right, next one. What's that one? Hopefully you said a quarter because it splits into 4 equal parts, but you've only got one of them shaded in. Right, last one. Ready? What's that one? Hopefully you said that that is a half because you've got a whole that's split into 2 equal parts, but only one of them is shaded in, so only a half is shaded in. Hopefully you got full marks on my quarter and a half game, and well done, we're doing a great job at learning about our quarters and our halves. So on to your challenges that you're going to do today then. You're going to have 3 different things to work out in your home learning journals. You're going to try working out a fraction of a shape. You're going to try working out a fraction of a length. And you're going to try and work out a fraction of a number. So on the class home learning page is a document, and you're going to click on that and then you're going to have a go. But before you do that, I'm going to go through some examples of them first so that you understand how to do them. So you have to bear with me because I'm going to try and show you on my pads, but it's quite heavy. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to have some shapes like mine here that I've drawn. And you're going to have to try and shade in or colour in a fraction of the shape, what it tells you to do. So my first one here, it's telling me to shade in a quarter of the shape. So I'm going to get my colouring pencil or pen and I'm going to think to myself, right, how am I going to do that? So I'm going to look at my fraction. I know that that's telling me that it's split into 4 equal parts, and to be able to shade in a quarter, I just need to shade in one of those parts. So you're going to do this nice and neatly, but for speed, I'm just going to do mine a little bit roughly. Yours needs to be nice and neat in your book. And I can see that I've now shaded in a quarter of my shape. Oh, this one's a bit trickier. So this one says to shade in half of the shape. Ooh. Now, the only thing with this is I can see I've got 4 parts, but I only need to shade in a half. That makes it a bit complicated. So I'm going to think back to my division that you did on Friday, where you were doing division and fractions alongside each other. And I need to basically find out what a half of 4 is so that I can work out how many parts I shade in. So if I do the sum, 4 divided by 2, that will give me what a half of 4 is. And that will then tell me how many I need to shade in for a half. So 4 divided by 2, you might know this by now by doing your practice. I'm just going to use my counters to help me. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I've split my 4 into 2 equal groups, and I can see in each of my groups I've got 2. So if I shade in 2 of my squares, I can see they're triangles actually, aren't they? Not squares. I can see that I've shaded in half of my shape. Right, my last shape I've got then is to shade a quarter of the shape. So I can see I'm lucky again this time. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Brilliant, that's what my quarter says I should have. And I just need to shade in one of those parts. So I'm just going to shade in one, Again, yours is going to be a lot neater than mine if you've got more time than I have. And there is my quarter of my shape shaded in. So it's really simple to shade in our shapes, our fractions of our shapes. We just need to look at how many parts, check we've got the right amount of parts. If we haven't, we can use our division to work it out. If we have, it's really easy. We then just shade in how many it says on the top. Really easy. So that is how to work out a fraction of a shape. Right, next one we're going to look at as an example is how to do a fraction of a length. So a length, if we remember, we haven't touched on this in year 2, but you should have done it in year 1. It's like centimetres, isn't it? It's measuring things, so how long. So if you wanted to know the length of a ruler, you would look at how many centimetres are on that ruler. If you wanted to know the length of a hockey stick, you would measure the hockey stick and you would see how long it is in centimetres or metres. So I have got some lengths here that I have drawn out in my book. Okay, now my question is to find half of 10 centimetres. So I have got my ruler here. You have to imagine this is a 10 centimetres on a ruler. It's a 10 centimetre line. And I need to work out what half of 10 centimetres is. So I'm going to think again back to my division and what we were looking at on Friday and how we were doing our division and our fractions next to each other and we were getting the same answer. So I need to work out what half of 10 is. There's a really simple way of doing that. Okay, all you need to do is you look at your 10, okay, and you look at your denominator. And you need to divide your 10, so your length, by your denominator, and that will give you the right answer. Okay, so if we do 10 and we divide 10 by our denominator, so by our 2, okay, that will give us the answer to our length. So again, you might be able to do this in your head because you've been practicing on hit the button, but I'm going to share my counters out just to make sure I'm right. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've shared my 10 into 2 equal groups and I can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in each of my groups. So if I find my 5 here, I can see that that's right. I can see that it looks like it is halfway between the 0 and the 10. So my answer is going to be 5 centimetres. So half of 10 centimetres is 5. My next one I've got then is to find a quarter of 8 centimetres. Ooh, okay, well, it's quite easy. So all I need to do is follow exactly the same rule. So I look at what my total I need to find a fraction of is. So my whole, if you like, is 8, isn't it? So my whole is 8, because that's my 8 centimetres. Now, do you remember if I'm going to divide this by something? What am I going to divide it by? See if you can remember what I did in my first example. That's right. I'm going to divide it by the denominator, okay? So I do 8 divided or shared between 4 equals, again, you might know that because you've been practicing your division, but I'm going to use my counters. So I'm going to share 8 into 4 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I can see that in each of my groups I've got 1, 2. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. And that tells me, if I find my 2 on my ruler, that 2 centimetres is a quarter of 8. So that's fantastic. Right, so that is how you find a fraction of a length. Okay, so fraction of centimetres or metres. So the last task for you today is to find a fraction of a number or of a amount. Okay, so here we now don't have any pictures to help us, so it's just a bit harder, but we know the strategy because we've done it already. So we're going to find a half of 6. Now, if you wanted to do that, what you could do, if you weren't too sure with your division, is you could just draw out 6 counters and you could split them into half, into 2 equal groups. So that's basically what we're going to do. So if we want to find a half of 6, all we do is just like we did up here. We take our whole, which is 6, and we share it, or we divide it by our denominator. So we do 6 divided by 2. So if I share out my 6 counters into 2 groups, I can see I've got 1, 2, 3 as my answer. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. So half of 6 is 3. It's really, really simple. And I can see that because I can see, if this was a shape, I can see that I've got 6 all together and half it, I can see I've got equal 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in each half. So I know I'm correct with my maths. Right, so let's try and find then a quarter of 12 using the same technique. So our whole, what's our whole going to be? Call out to me. Is our whole a quarter or is our whole 12? You're right, our whole is 12. So what am I going to divide my 12 by? Call out to me. Hopefully you said the denominator, which is 4. So I'm going to divide my whole by my denominator to give me the answer of a quarter of 12. So if I split my 12 into 4 equal groups, sorry if you can't see, it's quite heavy, this pad. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I can see in each of my groups, I've got 3. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. So that gives me the answer that a quarter of 12 is 3. Now last practice one then, find a half of 4. So I want you to tell me, what is my number sentence going to be? So this number sentence was 6 divided by 2. This one was 12 divided by 4. What's my last number sentence going to be? Hopefully you've said it's going to be 4, which is my whole, divided by my denominator, which is 2. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 shared into 2 equal groups, and I can see my answer is 2. So a half of 4 is 2. Oh, that was heavy. Right, so we have now practiced finding a fraction of a shape. We've practiced finding a fraction of a length. And we've practiced finding a fraction of a number. Okay, so like I said, on our website, on your class page, is a sheet. It's got some questions on there, and there's different ones to find a fraction of a shape, find a fraction of a length, find a fraction of a number. Okay, and I want you to have a go all those different types of questions. I'd like you, if you can, if you've got a printer, you could print it out and you could then write the answers on the sheet. If you don't have a printer, just draw out like I did, just draw out the shape or draw out the length, or draw out or write out the question and then write the answer next to it in your home learning journals. And let's make sure that they're really nice and neatly presented so that I can perhaps send some off to Mrs. Butler and Mrs. Mitchell to show to show them how beautiful our work is still being presented in year 2, even though we're not at school and we're at home doing our learning. Okay, any questions, just ask your class teacher, or if you're struggling, you're finding it a bit tricky, what you could do is you could play back my video, and as you're working through your questions, your different types, you could re-watch the bit about fractions of a shape and then answer your shape questions. And you could then re-watch the video bit about fractions of a length and then answer your questions. And you can finally watch the bit about fractions of a number and then answer your questions. Okay, so you don't have to just watch the video once and then try and guess your way through it. If you're finding it tricky, just re-watch my video and just pause me at all the different points, and you can rewind and watch the bits that you needed to remind yourself of. Okay, good luck, and I can't wait to see all your wonderful maths.